Hello everyone, DJ Neeks here, and this is probably the first of this type of video that I've ever done on my channel. It's a little unique for my channel. However, if you're going to compare it to anything, you could possibly compare it to any of Total Biscuit's WTF videos, where he looks at games and just gives his impressions and thoughts on a game. The reason I'm doing this is because of a number of reasons. One is because it involves the game you see on your screen here, Mass Effect Andromeda. And for any of you who have seen any of my Mass Effect playthroughs on my channel, you guys know that Mass Effect is my favorite franchise of all time. It's a franchise that became very close and dear to my heart, and obviously I was very interested in Andromeda for a number of reasons. But I was one of those who wasn't really that excited or optimistic about the game, but not for the reasons you might expect. And then the game went out a week early because of the whole Origin Access. You get to play the game a week early before anyone else, which I thought was really stupid. And then all of a sudden, all the hoopla and all the stuff from the internet came out about the game and its issues that people had a problem with, and it just kind of went downhill from there for this game and its reputation, where now things have gotten a little bad over at EA for the franchise. So obviously, leading up to this game's release, I did say that I was going to be playing this myself before I decided before I would do an actual playthrough of it on the channel. And this, since the game has come out, it's gone a few minor patches and a couple of big update patches that I think have tremendously improved the game. Now, I am one of those who I don't necessarily think it was, when I first heard about the issues, specific issues that this game had in regards to the facial animations, I didn't think it was that big of a deal. The reason I wasn't very excited or optimistic about this game leading up to its launch had nothing to do with anything like that, because to me it's not that big a deal. One of the major red flags for me was that when we first started hearing about special editions you could get for this game, I realized it was emphasizing stuff for multiplayer, and also certain editions you could get did not even come with the game. So I started seeing things that for me were kind of red flags, and I was a little concerned that there were priorities going on over there in the development of this that were not going to be as focused on the story, the world, the characters, as it had been in the previous games. That was a huge reason why many of us, including myself, fell in love with this franchise. But I am here to tell you that I was not really disappointed by this game as I was worried I was going to be, because, well, for one thing, I don't care as much about things like facial animations and graphics as some of these other people on the internet are complaining about, because I grew up in an era where we had games that looked 10 to 100 times worse than this game does, but that was the time we lived in. There was nothing that could be done about it. And yet now, I mean, look, it's okay to demand more from the developers from the games they make that we pay money from, but you gotta at some point think that it's not going to really hinder the experience as much as you let it if you know what you want to get from the game. So really, I'm just kind of letting you guys know that I'm not one of those who has jumped on the bandwagon to hate on this game, because I actually like this game in the franchise as a new entry. I like the concept, I like the direction that they took, and I actually have grown to like the story and its characters. Even our main guy here, Ryder, has grown on me. Yes, he's not Commander Shepard, but depending on how you play him or her, either one, there are some cool things you find out in the story. Obviously, this is not going to really involve any spoilers in this vlog, so don't worry. I'm not going to be really delving into that. This is my second run. This is the second Ryder I've made. Where I am just in the middle of my second run of this game to mess with alternate choices and see different things, because that's what you do in a BioWare game. You play through multiple times to see all the different choices and consequences and results that you get, that you can be able to experience. So that way I can know which is the best choice, which is considered the bad or good choices. However, I will say there's a lot of gray in this game, because some of the changes that have happened in this game, one of which being that the Paragon Renegade system is gone. But I don't necessarily think it's a detriment. I think it's actually a plus. It didn't necessarily feel like you were compelled to make one choice or the other if you wanted to get Paragon points or Renegade points. You didn't feel compelled to do that. You could be able to just make choices just however you felt you wanted to choose, not necessarily based on a certain game mechanic, which I think added a bit more freedom of choice in this game, which I think was a huge plus. As you can see here, we are on our ship, the Tempest. It's grown on me. It's, the Normandy will always have a special place in our hearts, but the Tempest is a beautiful, worthy successor of the Normandy. I really do like this ship. The crew here has grown on me as well. There's Callow. He's not, I'll always, Joker. We'll always love Joker. I'm not going to say that Joker is better, but I just prefer Joker because, he had a certain sense of humor, which I really liked. Callow is nice, though. He's a pretty cool guy. He does, have his own little arc here, which I do like. Same with Suvi. Each character does get their moments to shine with their own little bits of story, which I really enjoy. Some people may not enjoy it or like it, but I enjoyed what they provided here for each of the different characters, giving them their own little stories, little conversations, little moments to kind of shine in the story here, which is exactly what I was hoping for. I was hoping that none of that would get taken away during the development of this game, that they wouldn't start to emphasize different areas, because keep in mind, guys, the team that made the first 3 games is not the same team that made this game. It's a different division of BioWare. It's a different group of people, different personnel, which means how they develop games becomes different. They prioritize different things. Wow. I like the shadow thing there. That's really cool with that star over there in the background. I just think it looks really cool. It looks like the sun is behind me. I'm just kind of getting a shadow there. I just like the little effect. But the game I think has gotten a really bad rep when it comes to things like the graphics and animations and such. As at the time of this recording, it is version 1.6 has been released, and I did play through my entire first run of the game in the original launch version of the game before 1.5 came out. And so then when 1.5 came out, that's when I started my second run, and 1.6 has now come out during this run. And I've seen some videos that people have put up comparing how certain things like the animations and the cutscenes. Oh, there's a bug. Oh wait, no, is it? Yeah, it's a bug. Yep, because part of our ship was gone there. And you can see this is one of the reasons why I decided to kind of put off the playthrough, because, well, sometimes shelving a game while it gets worked on by the developers before you start recording it is not such a bad thing, and it's because of little bugs and little things like that. You see things like that and you go, yeah, this game needs some patchwork. That was my initial impressions when I was playing this game, is that it's fine, and I didn't think it was that big a deal in terms of like the animation and such, but oh boy, did it still need some patchwork, because there were some bugs I would encounter that I'm like, yep, this game still needs some work. It's not quite ready. I guess I may as well show you guys some things around here. An email terminal is a great, this is a little tool kind of similar to the terminal from the Normandy, where we would get either little missions or little prompts to go talk to somebody either on our ship or at a different place. This is our loadout station where we can change some stuff in order to make that change ahead of time before we go to a planet or something. Each of our squad members and such. This is the inner menu. It still looks very similar to the first 3 games. We have our journal, which I don't necessarily want to look at either of those right now, the journal or the codex, because you guys may see some spoilers. The inventory system has received some changes due to the amount of different customization that you can be able to do in here with pistols, assault rifles, shotguns, sniper rifles, melee, different pieces of armor. You can be able to use consumables, which is kind of something taken out of the multiplayer and put in here. And the thing about, that I was worried about, it's actually not as bad as I thought. It's very minor. They didn't really emphasize the multiplayer over the single player or anything like that, but rather they actually kind of made it where you could be able to do things from the multiplayer here in the single player. It's this thing here called Strike Team Missions, and it's something where you have these teams that you can be able to send out in missions. It reminds me a lot of what you can do in World of Warcraft, in both Warlords of Draenor and Legion, sending out people on missions to take care of certain missions and get you some rewards or resources. Like, see, those 2 teams came back and I got some reward boxes as a result for the single player. And you can also get rewards for the multiplayer, so it's kind of back and forth. But the multiplayer is pretty much copy and paste from Mass Effect 3. It's just horde mode with microtransactions, which is something that I have no interest really in doing. And it is cool that they found a way to try and make it rewarding for the single player portion, but it's still not quite what many of us had wanted, or rather what many others had wanted from the whole multiplayer aspect. They wanted co-op and such. But anyway, that's how that's been incorporated. So any of my concerns in that regard were put to rest when I saw that stuff. That was something that I was like, okay, so that's not something I have to worry about at all. I do want to point out, though, this right here, the Nomad is a... if we thought we thought the Mako was coming back, and we were like, oh no, let me tell you guys right now, this thing is nothing like the Mako. It is pretty much everything the Mako should have been in terms of how it runs. It runs like a regular vehicle, with all-terrain mode and such, with those wheels that you would expect, how you would expect it to run, as opposed to how it ran in the first game. The only difference, though, with this is that it doesn't have any weapons on it like the Mako did. So anytime you encounter enemies, you have to get out of the vehicle in order to do combat. You can't just take them down when you're in the Nomad. So that I thought was a little disappointing, that there was no weapons or such on the Nomad, but it makes the exploration aspect much better, because the thing is, with this game, it did take kind of a page from Dragon Age Inquisition, that in the whole go explore and gather resources, which I can understand where they're going with the premise of the game, and it's fine, but in Dragon Age Inquisition, it felt very boring, very tedious, and I got very tired of it, which is why I never really felt compelled to play the Dragon Age multiple times, because to me, I just didn't want to have to do all the busy work all that time, because I thought it was just a waste of time, and it took away from me being able to do the story. But you kind of felt compelled you had to do it, because you also had to level up in order to be able to be at the right level to take on the harder story missions, and it became more of a grind, unfortunately. But it doesn't feel that way here in this game, partly because of the Nomad and helping you get around the terrain a lot faster, but also because of your mobility. When you're out in the field, and I'll probably show you guys that in a moment here, but this is something you can do here. You can just wear casual attire when you're here on the Tempest, and you can be able to go into your cabin and customize it. Whereas the captain's cabin in the Normandy was like at the top of the ship, and you had an aquarium and such. Here is the captain's, or rather, what you are in this game is called the Pathfinder, because of course, for those who don't know, the premise of this is that this is a group of humans, a very large group, like we're talking hundreds, that got on something called an arc, of course, that traveled from the Milky Way galaxy just before the Reapers showed up for Mass Effect 3 to another new galaxy called Andromeda. Pretty much trying to be pioneers and try to establish themselves in a new galaxy so that they can be able to survive here. So you've got your email terminal, you've got this thing called Sam. I don't want to get too much into that because it's kind of spoilery. But think of it in the same way as Edie was on the Normandy in Mass Effect 2, and you'll probably get the right idea. This is a little, I guess, it's a planetary hollow thing you can use. This is a cool system I really like, which I think helps the game. It's called planetary viability, where you are trying to make the planets, or some of the planets in this game, sorry, I dropped something, more viable for your people, because some of them were in cryosleep. You'll see in the beginning when I eventually do the playthrough is that they were all in cryosleep because they took like a 600-year journey to get from the Milky Way galaxy to here. It reminded me similar to how they would travel from one system to another in like the Alien movies. So some of them are in cryosleep, and you have to make the planets viable so they can release more people from cryosleep so that they can be able. In fact, you can see it here on the right side here, next level, allowing you to awaken more colonists from cryosleep. So all the stuff you're doing, even the little tedious side quests, collecting resources and such, it actually makes the planets more viable, which leads to you getting more viability points, which you can use to get more perks, and be able to get certain rewards and things like that. So it all goes towards a purpose, which is leaps and bounds makes it better in this game than it did in Dragon Age Inquisition. So even though there is still some like crafting and collecting resources busy work, it doesn't feel as tedious or as boring or as much of a chore as it was in Inquisition, which I think is a tremendous positive boost for this game. As I mentioned over here, you can be able to go over here to wardrobe and customize your attire, your casual outfit when you are on your ship. You can be able to customize the color of your armor. That's one of the current armor sets that I have. It's actually one that you get when you get the deluxe edition of the game, which I did. So you can be able to do that. You do get your big bed just like you did on the Normandy. You don't have a fish aquarium, sadly. However, you can be able to have a little pet Pyjack here, and sometimes he'll sit right here on this couch, and he'll be all cute, just sitting there, just looking at you like, what? And if you're wondering, yes, there is a space hamster. He is somewhere. In fact, it's possible. No. Okay, the side quest... Oh, hold on. I take that. Hold on a second. No, never mind. There is a little side quest here where you may find some crumbs here, and you'll be like, oh, we have a stowaway on board, and it'll lead you to finding the space hamster, and you'll be able to get him in your, have him here in your room on your desk, and, you'll get to be reunited with our beloved space hamster from the first 3 games. Or rather 2 and 3, because that wasn't in the first game. But there are various different things where it feels new, but it also feels like they wanted to have longtime players and fans have that sense of nostalgia playing this, where you will get things that will give you some... it'll feel a bit like fan service. This is the Nomad that I was referring to before. You can see it here. Oh, and there is one of the crew members, Cora. How does the crew and your squad in this game compare to the previous 3? Obviously, when we were with some of those guys for 3 games, we grew very attached to them. Obviously, guys like Garrus, Rex, Liara, Tally, we grew very attached to them. So this is the first time we're encountering these characters. But I grew to really like this group, and I do think that they have a place here as part of that group of beloved companion characters. Some I like more than others. Some I'm like, you're okay. but like we also do get, well, actually I'm not going to say about another character because it could be a little spoilery, even though you do acquire this character in like on the first planet. But yeah, I'll save that for the playthrough. The galaxy map, compared to the previous ones, you can see here, this is one of the planets we're on here. It shows the viability, current quests that are available there. This is how the system looks. You can see up there at the top it says progression 100%. That's because I've scanned everything here. So if you're wondering how it works, well, basically, I'll see something here like Comet Dawnstar. I'll press X, and it used to be it would do this travel animation here, which I guess I'll let you guys see the whole thing here. When the game first launched, it would make it where you had to watch this the whole way. Like, every single time you traveled from one planet or thing in the system to another, you would have to watch that whole thing. You would come up here, you'd check something, you'd scan it, you'd pick it up, and then you'd go back to the system view and go to the next one and do the same thing. But fortunately, they heard us complain about that we got tired of seeing this every time, so they added a skip button so we don't have to watch that, which I think that's wonderful. A wonderful display of them listening to us and our feedback and wanting to make some corrections and fix some mistakes or try to make it better for those of us that got their game, because they actually want us to like it as much as, they for as much as the effort that they put into it. But they, the fact that they are willing to be like, okay, we may have made mistakes here and there, we'll try and fix it. So you can see each one here is 100%, 85%. This is the whole galaxy. You'll see some are not available yet, but you can see the little stars there that represent certain systems. Those open up as the game progresses, which I think is fine for the pacing. It doesn't make, like, if all these were available right now, right off the bat, I'd be like, oh gosh, this feels a little overwhelming. But fortunately, the game does pace pretty nicely. It takes it a little slow at times, letting you kind of get your bearings and deal with certain things. So let me kind of show you guys how it goes from one system to another, and then we'll disembark on the first planet that you guys saw I had the most viability for, so I can show you guys what it's kind of like when you do go on a planet to explore in comparison to how it used to be, where really the only game in this series that had that before was the first Mass Effect game, and it was not that great, and they pretty much got rid of it. But as I mentioned just a moment ago, they did kind of incorporate the mineral scanning from Mass Effect 3 more so than 2. 2 was kind of a ignore that architect husk thing there, where you had to do the long scan for minerals, and it became very tedious, and you didn't want to do it. Let me go ahead and just kind of disembark here. It is kind of cool. You get to see something. And I will say, some of the stuff in this game does look gorgeous. So don't believe all the negative rep that you have probably heard from people that have wanted to declare that this game is a piece of garbage, to never pick it up, to stay away from it. I'm here to tell you that that is all extremely exaggerated. The game does look really good. Keep in mind, this is the first Mass Effect game we've had on a PlayStation 4, compared to the first three games which were on PS3, even though I will acknowledge and admit that some of the character looks, animations, and how the character is designed to look actually don't look as good as the characters looked in Mass Effect 3, which is a shame, considering that, this is supposed to be the next entry and it's supposed to look even better. But sadly, when it doesn't look as good as Mass Effect 3 did, that is a bit of a problem. So as you can see here, we've disembarked. We are wearing our armor. That's one of my squad mates, the Asari on our group. Her name is Peebee. She's gotten a bit of a reputation with some of the clips that they had shown leading up to this game's release, and some of the animations involving her that looked really bad, like her pointing her gun backwards but firing at an enemy. They have fixed that, fortunately. So that is something to keep in mind, that they did hear people's complaint. People complain about that little glitch, and they took care of it. So we have these little fast travel points here that you can be able to access the research center. You can be able to use your loadout. You can be able to deploy the Nomad, and so then you get in the Nomad, and then you are able to switch back and forth from a speed mode to an all-terrain vehicle mode, and look at how it operates and runs compared to the Mako. You can already tell right off the bat it feels a lot better, much better than how the Mako operated. There's no weird bouncing animations and flipping and everything. It's very realistic, and I really like that. So when you go to the map here, you can see these fast travel points. You'll see different missions there. These for minerals, like I said, there is some mineral gathering gathering resources type of mechanic, but it's not egregious, and it's not as tedious because I can just fast travel here. I can drive to it in the Mako. Oh, and also, let me get out of the. I have a jetpack. So to speak. It's not, they don't call it a jetpack, but that's pretty much what it is. So being able to do this, when you have to do stuff like that, all those types of little side missions and such, just makes it a lot better compared to Inquisition, where you had to run the whole time, or you got on the horse, which felt very awkward. When you have both the Nomad and this jetpack, it feels a lot better. So it doesn't feel as tedious or boring. Which is the primary examples of why I think this is a huge improvement in that aspect of the game compared to the likes of Dragon Age Inquisition. There are, I guess I can try and just show you guys the skill. So you're not restricted to classes, to one single class like you were in the first 3 games. You can be able to be a jack of all trades if you want, or just specialize in certain ones. Now for this run, I'm mainly trying out the soldier aspect, where it's just weapons combat, because the first run I did I was mainly just tech, because I've always liked the engineer aspect of the game. So right now it's just certain skills and such. There is biotics as well. You can be able to just put points whenever you level up. You get a certain amount of points, and you can put that into these 3 different categories. And that can let you be able to do this thing called profile, which, as you can see, it does list off the certain classes that we used to have in the first 3 games. But it's now much cooler in that regard, in that you can be able to just go back and forth depending on how many skill points you have in each of the different categories. You can see, as you can see right there, 3 skill points each invested in biotics and tech, 3 each in combat and biotics if you want to do those. I could go back and forth between Infiltrator or Soldier. Explorer is the jack of all trades, as I mentioned before, where it has 2 skill points each invested in each category. That's how you unlock that. So if you want to be able to have a mixture of all 3 of the different categories of skill points, you can be able to do that, which I think is a fantastic concept, that you're not restricted to the classes anymore, that you can just be able to customize your character's skills however you want, whether you want to be just a weapons guy, if you want to try out some biotics, try out some tech, or have a mixture of all 3. I think it's a fantastic design choice. So that's kind of some of the things I just kind of want to give you guys my initial impressions of, that I have so far enjoyed playing this game, contrary to what you have heard from the rest of the internet regarding this game. My first run was in the original version of the game, which was okay, but as you can see, like that right there, to me that looks like a little bug or something. The game does still need patchwork. It still needs to be fixed up, patched up, have some bugs taken care of here and there. But the fact that they're trying to improve various certain things that we heavily criticize, like the infamous now "my face is tired" bit from that one character where she would just stare at you with her eyes just wide open, just like I like like her eyes were gonna pop out. Where now, if you see that cutscene, you'll see that like her eyes are kind of like, half open, and then she like kind of rubs her eyes with her hand, saying, "Oh, my face is tired." Like she's actually trying to rubbing her eyes because of how tired she is. That is like just like an incredible show of we are trying to make this game better than what you guys thought it was, and I think that's a testament as to one of the reasons why many of us became fans of BioWare. The fact that they are willing to hear our criticisms and feedback and say, okay, we'll try and take care of that, we'll try and improve it or fix it, compared to other studios that would say, well, too bad, that's what you paid for. Not that there are any studios in particular I want to call out or anything on that, but it's things like that it's why I became a fan of studios like both BioWare and Blizzard, because Blizzard does the same thing. So I wanted to let you guys know, don't believe all the exaggerated negative hype about this game. It's actually pretty darn good. If I were to give it a grade now based on its current version and version 1.6, which has tremendously improved a ton of things since the game launched, I would say right now the game is a 7 out of 10, close to an 8. I was almost leaning to an 8 out of 10, but I can understand some of the other criticisms that have been laid on, but at the same time, some of those are personal preference thing. I mean, I personally am so okay with the game, even though there are some things I do have a little bit of a kind of a picky thing here and there. I think a 7 is a solid grade that people have been giving. I think Total Biscuit said it right. Said it put it adequately in his video about this, about the single player portion of this game, is that this game is as much of a 7 out of 10 as you could make any say about any game. In that it's a probably around an above average to really good game, somewhere in that regards. But the fact that it's getting worked on and improved and patched up and things like that, I think could actually make it an 8 out of 10 in my book. I think that they continue to patch this up. I could absolutely say that this is an 8 out of 10. How soon am I going to be doing a playthrough of this? Well, I mean, obviously I'm still playing my second run here off camera to see different choices and different stuff, so I can be able to have a much wider spectrum of all the different choices and consequences and results, so I can know in my head, just kind of ahead of time, what choices I would want to make in certain aspects of the game, like I did with the first 3 games, because it's a little bit more complicated than that, because, as I mentioned before, there is no Paragon Renegade system anymore. As you'll see here in the skills area, there's nothing here about Paragon or Renegade. There is no aspect of that game at all in this. It's all just make a choice. There's no red option or blue option. That's gone. It's all just however you see the choices. You could say they're great choices. Some of them are great choices. There's no mechanic incentivizing you to choose one over the other unless it's like story related, in terms of like this choice could result in someone dying, or this choice could result in someone being saved, or something like that. And I think it's actually a positive. Obviously, some of us are going to miss the whole Paragon Renegade mechanic, but I think it's actually all the better for it. I think Mass Effect Andromeda is actually a pretty darn good game and entry in this franchise. Did it meet my expectations? Well, considering that I kept my expectations low, considering all the behind-the-scenes circumstances surrounding the game, I'd say it actually was above my expectations because I kept them very low. I wasn't really expecting that much, and I was pleasantly surprised, despite what many people had been saying leading up to the game, and the fact that they just immediately wrote the game off because they thought the facial animations looked bad, thinking that apparently that's the only thing that you can ever grade a game upon, which I just thought was the most ridiculous thing that I was hearing from them, that because of some of these certain little animations that they thought that meant the entire game was awful. It's the same thing that people said about Mass Effect 3, where they thought because they didn't like the ending that meant the entire game was garbage, which I thought was completely unfair and absolutely ridiculous claim. And I know some people actually did not finish Mass Effect 3 because they didn't want to experience those endings they had heard about, because they didn't want to hurt their enjoyment of the game, which I guess that's fine. But as you guys saw in my playthrough, I was happy and satisfied with the choices I ended up with after they had made the extended cut of that. But that's a whole nother discussion. I'm here to tell you guys, Mass Effect Andromeda is a pretty darn good game that I think is a good entry in the series, is a better game than Dragon Age Inquisition was in terms of the dealing with the busybody work, that the whole collect resources thing, all the tedious work, that in this game it's a lot better than it was in Dragon Age Inquisition. Inquisition, it was a good entry. I did like it, but I have actually been enjoying this game more than I did Dragon Age Inquisition, for certain some of those certain various reasons. There are some certain story things. I mean, don't get me wrong. I do love the Dragon Age franchise, probably just as much as I do Mass Effect, but so far I'm liking what I am seeing. Now, obviously, I know that, well, I'm hoping that there's going to be more to come with this game. We have had DLC for these BioWare games in the past. However, I am now hearing that EA is trying to shelve the Mass Effect franchise until they can try and repair the reputation that this game has apparently gotten, because apparently the sales did so badly for this game that some think that they're planning on killing the franchise, like shelving it until further notice, because it didn't sell all that well, because, well, once the Internet got word, or, started seeing all the facial animation stuff, the reputation of it got out, and, well, that was that, unfortunately. But I want to let you guys know, Mass Effect Andromeda is worth picking up, especially if you are a fan of the franchise. Don't let all the negative, exaggerated hype about the animations and graphics and all that turn you away from picking this up. Because, one, a lot of that has been fixed and made better. And two, the value you get from this game is worth picking up, okay? So, Mass Effect Andromeda is a good entry. The playthrough of this game will be heading to my channel at some point in the future. I don't know when, but it will eventually happen. I promise you that. There's no way I would not do a playthrough of this game. Some behind-the-scenes stuff in terms of me figuring out, how would I handle that? Well, because if you guys saw my playthrough of Inquisition, you may know certain things I kind of had to edit, but that's a whole nother discussion. So, thumbs up from me on Mass Effect Andromeda. The playthrough will eventually show up on this channel. When? I don't know yet, but it will happen. So, I just wanted you guys, I'm sure you were curious about my thoughts about the game since it launched, and, well, there you have it. So, I'm DJ Neeks, and I will see you guys when the Mass Effect Andromeda playthrough comes out, and in the meantime, you can also expect more at some point on my Renegade runs for the first 3 Mass Effect games. And if you do want a bit more about Mass Effect, there's always my playthroughs from my Paragon runs from the Shepard trilogy. So I will see you guys then.